blue economy is an ideal concept because it's easy understanding for everybody. Everybody can understand that the blue economy includes the ocean, the lakes, the river, everything is blue, and everything is dedicated to the economy, which is very, very important, absolutely now.
We are discussing the blue economy in Madagascar, a very important topic for our sub-region, not only for island states and coastal states, but also for the hinterland, because these are interconnected economies.
There is also provisions that pertain particularly to the rights of landlocked states as well as geographically disadvantaged states. The Convention also covers issues such as dispute settlement procedures in case there is a dispute with regards to the interpretation of any provisions of the Convention.
The importance of the blue economy for member states, either it is landlocked countries or coastal or island states. And there was a need for more regional cooperation in exploring blue economy. I think the main thing is the public awareness of the importance of maritime economy. And the second thing is this kind of meeting is helping countries that has already a maritime strategy or a blue economy strategy to find a way to implement them. And the last thing is to help member states to have their own national strategy and policy on blue economy.
The oceans, the seas, the waters that surround us in this region offer us an opportunity that was not recognized before for the countries to exploit resources which are associated with these waters, especially like minerals and also the transportation systems that are afforded by these waterways.
The question, however, still lingers. How feasible is it for African countries to rely on blue economy as a sustainable option?
So economy can start looking at the goods and services of the environment. So you can actually start factoring that in when you do your economy. So put some kind of a price on what the ecosystem are providing you. And also when you want to do a decision and you want to try to do a decision on developing some kind of blue economy, it's important to do a cost-benefit analysis. So look at the benefits that the society can get from this, but also look at the environmental benefit. And then you have to look at your costs, because when you do something, you are most of the time gonna interfere in someone else's space. So if you wanted to do something in tourism, you want to build something, you might actually work in a fisherman's space, and then you might also go into some kind of transportation. So I think it's important that you when you look at blue economy, that you have a more cross-sectorial approach to making decisions. So everyone who operates in the ocean should be on the table when you want to do a new thing.
Landlocked countries within the Northern Corridor currently spend about half of their export earnings to finance transport costs. According to key experts in maritime trade and blue economy, the best way for Uganda, Rwanda and Burundi to benefit is through taking advantage of Mombasa's strategic positioning and regional integration in laying down road, rail, pipeline and inland waterways transport, which will in turn create value addition and jobs for citizens in member states.
Try and get the best out of natural resources has been a very big challenge to most African countries and to other countries and also the other countries that are producing natural resources. In order to get a framework, to get a specific formula to manage these natural resources is to contribute to the development of its economies. It's quite an important issue. And the implementation will lie under the needs. The implementation framework will need a great skills, of course. It will also need a great political backing, and also it will need a great effort of teamwork amongst the countries in the region in order to have this kind of developments.
If you look at the export patterns of most of us, which reflect, of course, the fact that all of us are exporting raw materials, we all look beyond Africa for our export routes. And yet, there's great potential for intra-African trade. So if island states are not linked with their coastal neighbors or with landlocked countries, that potential will not be realized.
Blue economy is a new concept being collectively looked at by East African countries so as to reach out to the sea and export waters. The benefits of exploring this sector go far beyond the cost implications.
We have the high seas, which are the area of sea that are outside of the territorial sea, outside of the exclusive economic zone. So the waters that are beyond that are the high seas, and these seas are not subject to appropriation or by any state or to any kind of sovereign claim. So in effect, what it is that it's what applies in that part of the oceans is freedoms, certain freedoms. So you have freedoms of navigation, freedoms to lay, for example, submarine cables and pipelines. You have the freedom of marine scientific research, for example. So there's a number of freedom. I mentioned navigation. So that's pretty much sort of how it works. Now, that being said, states using this area of sea and its resources are required to give due consideration to the interests of other states. So there is a kind of good faith obligation entailed in that to be cognizant that other states, there are other users in that space. It's a shared space, so there should be cooperation in terms of how it's managed and how the resources are used. The landlocked states or transit states are supposed to enter into agreements, bilateral or whatever other agreements, to facilitate access of the landlocked states to and from the sea. And that could be affected by road networks or rail networks and whatever other forms of transport modalities that the states would be able to.
According to my experience of the Indian Ocean and islands, the Indian Ocean and the Channel of Mozambique, Kenya is really a key point into the geographical situation. Yeah. And Kenya is also a big success in terms of, for instance, the connection of railways between the capital of Nairobi and the port of Mombasa. It's a real success. There are many good issues. Good issues, meaning good solutions found in this country. And I honestly think that Kenya can be a model for the other countries in terms of link between infrastructures. I mentioned especially the intermodal supply chain. As you know now, the common international standard, and Kenya is really at its best and is one of the top countries with new technology for this activity.
When we talk about trickling down, we've got lots of different people who are interested in different things. We have the people in yesterday's panel discussion who are asking, what about jobs for our youth? There are others that are wanting to engage in research and develop their own skills. And then there are also people in the business sector who are looking for opportunities. The media play a fundamental role, obviously, but because the media obviously has very wide reach. But the media don't just deal with the average person or the person on the street who's looking for a job, but also policymakers, prime ministers, business communities, students are all following this, and it forms an entry point. It's also up to the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and other regional entities to make sure we have better information available so that those that want to find out more can find out more, including how we can engage on the business, opportunities to conduct scientific research and improve our capacities, and also possibilities to strengthen our institutions so that we can have a bigger role in this new venture.
Oil and gas have been harvested from under the sea for decades. But more and more companies are now trying to obtain licenses to mine minerals like copper, cobalt, gold and manganese from the seabeds. To mine the minerals, remotely operated vehicles are sent to the seafloor at depth of up to 1.6 kilometers for surveys and to help install sonar buoys. 3 machines, a bulk cutter, an auxiliary cutter machine and a collecting machine are then lowered using steel cables. The descent lasts approximately 1.5 hours. The machine are tracked by the sonar buoys to within an accuracy of 0.5 meter. The machines are connected to the surface by cables that provide support, communication, power and navigation capabilities. They send HD video and 3D sonar maps back to the operators aboard the ship as they crawl across the seabed on caterpillar-style tracks. The auxiliary cutter harvests steep and uneven areas on the sea floor, using hundreds of teeth to crush the rocks into small pieces. The bulk cutter follows behind, moving at around 1 meter a minute as it harvests rock from flat areas using a rotating cylinder equipped with 3-inch teeth. The rocks are ground and then sucked through the machines where sensors measure temperature, pressure, density and vibration before depositing the slurry on the sea floor. The collecting machine follows behind, sucking up the wet rock slurry and sending it to an external pump that takes the material to the surface via a rubber pipe. Once on the ship, the rock slurry is filtered and dried and then loaded onto a barge. It is then taken ashore for refining.
You want to have 90 megatons of massive sulfide before it becomes quite attractive. So 90 megatons, that's 90 million tons of ore. That's not 90 million tons of gold, silver, lead and copper. The gold, silver, lead and copper is just a fraction of that. So you're talking about maybe, roughly speaking, a couple tons of actual the element that you want. There's lots of different interests, this is true, and there are those that are very concerned about ecosystems, not least because they've seen what's happened previously on land as well as offshore with various fishing techniques. There's been some testing of dredging for manganese nodules, and as it was pointed out, 25 years later the tracks are still fresh on the seafloor with absolutely no recovery in the ecosystem. So there's legitimate concerns. The cobalt-rich ferromanganese crusts and the polymetallic nodules require mining over vast areas if you're to extract them, because they are very thin but they occur over very large areas. And because they form over such a long time, the ecosystems that come with them form over a very long time. Polymetallic sulfides, which are your black smokers on the seafloor, you may have seen it on nature documentaries, are a bit more condensed and don't have that issue in terms of having to be over such a large area. But again, there's other environmental issues simply with, it's a very unique ecosystem, they tend to occur in chains, and we're not too sure what would happen if we took out one part of the chain in terms of the rest of the ecosystem. So those are legitimate concerns. At the same time, we need development, and we need to actually consume more in our part of the world if we are to develop. But we also, to support that consumption is not the mining of minerals, but the economic activities that we engage in. And this is why when we look at minerals, whether it's deep sea minerals, whether it's near shore minerals, or whether it's on land minerals, we're looking at the linkages. How do we supply those operations with equipment, with machinery, with other things? And you've got to remember, every single mining operation has literally hundreds of inputs. Everything from light bulbs to ball bearings to conveyor belts, as well as high-tech equipment. But it's not all high-tech. So there are opportunities for safety boots, overalls, you name it.
My main takeaway and first point is the fact that we as an environmental organization are now invited to participate in these more economic views. And I think that's a huge step towards having a better communication between the environment and the economy side. And I'm happy to see how much environment is mentioned in these meetings and how people care about the environment that they live in, and they see that having a pristine blue environment is very important, and they want to keep that even though they want to go into exploiting it as well. So harvesting blue economy.
With increased interest by foreign countries to invest in African countries, investors will naturally go where conditions are more favorable and infrastructure more appealing. In that regard, Rwanda, in its plight to improve its business environment, has introduced tax holidays and similar tax incentives, along with ease of doing business, with the hope of seeing more sectors like the blue economy tapped into.
Today, with the difficulty that Africa has faced until now, there is no choice. We absolutely need to create jobs to fight against poverty. And the blue economy concept, including all the industrial and all the small and little activities, is really able to create jobs and, I will say, to put the energy of the ocean into this situation, which is very difficult today. So we have the opportunity to success, and I'm quite sure that we are going to success with the blue economy.
Mm-hmm. Some of the constraints hindering investors, however, from establishing markets include low productivity and misinformation about business, among others. Geographical constraints also provide a major challenge, given Rwanda's lack of proximity to huge sea bodies and incomplete rail and road infrastructure.
Being far away from the coast is a reality that we're dealing with, and of course it's a constraint in our economic activity. However, the reason that Rwanda prioritizes being in the East African community, or even in the Northern Corridor projects, and now Central Corridor is also coming up, is precisely because we want to put in place both soft and hard infrastructure that will make it cheaper and address, not completely, but mitigate the problem of being far away from the coast. So the railway is one project, but also, having one border post instead of having several borders, removing roadblocks, making customs territory just one, so you clear your goods once if you're importing from Mombasa. These are some of the projects that are put in place to actually reduce the problem of being landlocked. But obviously we know we can never completely eliminate it, but we can mitigate it, and that's what we're addressing to do. There's always challenges in investing in any economy, and Rwanda is no exception. What I would say are the challenges that we have today. One is that we want to provide enough infrastructure for investors when they come in the country. When I say infrastructure, I mean enough power that is affordable and reliable. We're talking about enough water, because a lot of projects need reliable water. We're talking about enough road network, among others. So providing the infrastructure is one challenge that investors need, and so it's a top priority in our investment promotion, and also for government resources to be able to provide this infrastructure for investors who need them. The second challenge I'll talk about is the cost of financing that keeps coming up. Investors want to be able to access funding that has an interest rate of between 10 and 15%, they keep telling us. But now if you look at the interest rates in the banks, it's 18, 19, 20, sometimes even up to 21. But how we're addressing that is we think that we need to increase liquidity on the market. And to do that, we have a specific plan of improving our financial services to attract more money from the world to come and establish in Rwanda.
From all the discussions that have been taking place, including the recent summit of the heads of state for the Northern Corridor, you saw that the key focus and the debate has been on the railway. Okay? A railway is not something that you fix in a day. No, we said, first of all, we need to reduce the cost of transport from Mombasa to here, and then also in the Central Corridor from Dar es Salaam to here. And that one, we have a plan that is there, because we only use the road in the Northern Corridor, and it is expensive. It is slow and it is expensive. That one, when the heads of state took a decision, then we said, let's have an infrastructure levy. That infrastructure levy, which is 1.5% of the imports, is helping us, not coming directly in the budget, but also being on the side to make sure that we can have our own contribution in addition to other borrowing. We can use that one to make sure that we can contribute that. We've been working with Africa 50 to make sure that we have a study, to make sure that we have the economics of the whole railway that is going to generate income, that is profitable, that is now ready, that we can use to bring in the private sector to say, if you invest in this project, we can invest together, and it makes all the sense. Also, the heads of state started by the quick wins, the single customs territory. You remember when the heads of state says, let's remove the roadblocks, let's remove all the way bridges, let's use one bond rather than having so many bonds for insurance. They removed so many things. And these things has helped us. That means you can really clear from the port of Mombasa, and you don't have to really do multiple clearance. and all the Rwandans, the Ugandans, and the Kenyans are all allowed to operate in the same area. And all these kind of reforms which have been undertaken by a head of state has yielded results, and that's why we are saying that it used to take 22 days from Mombasa to Kigali, and now it is taking 5 to 6 days maximum because of those kind of actions. A container, 20-feet container, is now almost getting, the expenditure is now almost half of what you used to spend. But as we do this, then we're also looking at the big infrastructure projects. We're also looking at the pipelines. We're also talking about the transmission so that we can link up, we can be able to import energy by having the same 400 kilovolts on the whole from here to Uganda to Kenya to Ethiopia. These are the projects which are being implemented. Of course, you don't expect them to realize all these projects in one day or in 1 year, especially those heavy projects.
In terms of exploiting the potential to develop the fishing industry in Rwanda, taking advantage of the presence of lakes and even the possibility to develop artificial ponds, it's an industry actually which is growing very fast. And we have a strategy, and figures I have actually show that the production of fish in Rwanda has been growing by more than 50% on an annual basis in the last 5 years. And this is supposed to continue in the coming decade. And I think when you look at these numbers, Rwanda can be self-sufficient very quickly in fish. Yes, apart from fishing, there are other potential use of lakes, particularly to facilitate internal transport. Internal transport, for example, there is a plan to develop mini ports along the Kivu Lake borders to facilitate really maritime transport on the Kivu Lake. And using this you can ship easily goods from Rubavu to Kyangugu using the Kivu Lake. There is a huge potential there, and I know there is now a strategy being developed by RTDA, Rwanda Transport Development Authority, to really tap into the potential to develop transport on the Kivu Lake. On the lakes at the eastern part of Rwanda, there are already some small and medium enterprises with small boats facilitating people to cross these lakes using the boats. But there is a room for improvement for sure.
There is a need for Rwanda to constantly benchmark against other countries with similar targets in each of the performing sectors.
What we have initiated in UNECA in partnership with the East African community is to work on a regional energy security policy framework. Member states in Eastern Africa have already recognized that whichever scenario that they are taking, off-grid renewable energy technologies would have to be part of the solution. As a result, some have already set clear targets. For example, in Madagascar, they would like to see 75% of their energy portfolio to come from renewable energy sources by 2020.
Through the delivery of services, intergovernmental organizations can help member states and regional economic communities in the formulation and implementation of macroeconomic and sectoral policies and programs, and to domesticate and mainstream regional integration processes, instruments, and decisions into national policy, legal, and regulatory frameworks. This is necessary for sectors such as the blue economy that is still an untapped and commonly misunderstood area.
I think inclusiveness is really important in the process. So we need more engagement of UNECA with the member states, always asking the contribution of member states in their work so that the outcome of the report or the studies that is carried out by UNECA will be accepted by the member states wide.
14 different countries, it's really a big challenge because there are many different cultures, there are many different languages, there are many different approaches. And thanks to UNECA, we are able, in fact, to build a union with this concept of blue economy, so meaning that we are in a position to have the force, we can be stronger to do something. So yes, to reply to your question, yes, it's obvious that UNECA is the tool to get this target and this success in creating jobs and fighting against the poverty.
The EAC taken together offers us a market of 150 million. So it's a matter of a market, but also capital. We can really leverage investment from other EAC countries, or Rwandans invest in other EAC countries, and the matter of skills as well. It is a strong building block that we have here as the EAC. Let's even move faster so that we are really a block that has cohesion, has exactly the same regulations, where workers can move freely, and it will put us in a much stronger position.